I've often thought that if someone were to really study the Enochian material, Enochian magic, all the way back to John Dee and Edward Kelly with a modern eye, then we might just be able to prove some variety of, I don't know, intelligence beyond the human. Now, this is apparently what one of the world's leading occultists, Israel Regardie, said to Vincent Bridges. So, first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Nuno de Oliveira, I hope I'm saying that right, for putting me onto a rabbit hole that is so fascinating around the subject. He sent me an article by a Vincent Bridges, who used to be, is no longer with us unfortunately, an occultist that was showing up in all kinds of Atlantis shows and History Channel shows, but he had a fascination with language and the work of John Dee and Edward Kelly. Why we're interested in John Dee isn't just because he was a magician or a spy or the original 007 or even Queen Elizabeth's astrology homie, okay? Although, let's be honest, that's all pretty cool. What made him truly fascinating is that Dee believed he was talking to, let's call them, non-human intelligences, but angels, okay? And he didn't just take their word for it. He documented everything in obsessive detail. Now, this wasn't the kind of vague, mystical communication where someone claims to hear a voice in their head. No. Dee built an entire system around it with the help of medium Edward Kelly. So together they structured a grammatical language, one that we now call Enochian. And this is where things get weird, or depending on how you look at it, where they get really interesting. See, Dee and Kelly didn't just receive messages from angels. The angels taught them a language that supposedly predated human speech. The language, the original language from the Garden of Eden, the lost language of Adam before the fall. Or the same language spoken by Enoch, the biblical figure who walked with God instead of dying, okay? Enoch, the prophet who ascended to heaven, who became the angel Metatron. Where have we heard about that before? Now, this wasn't some random string of mystical syllables either. It had an alphabet, a syntax, phonetics, and rules. The angels even dictated it letter by letter, spelling out entire phrases in a way that suggests that Dee and Kelly were not making things up on the fly. And that's why people even today still debate what the hell was happening. Was it divine revelation? Was it a drug trip? Was it some dive into the unconscious mind? Was it, something playing out in the imaginal realm, or some kind of elaborate renaissance, role-playing exercise? But this is where it truly gets mind-bending. Was it something far more advanced than we're used to thinking about? Was it actually a science hidden in a historical context? Now, I know that sounds like a pretty big claim that this might be actually ancient science in historical context, but really, that's what we do. So, the idea comes from the way that John Dee and Edward Kelly recorded the angelic dictation, and literally how later esoteric traditions, particularly the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, interpreted them. So Dee and Kelly didn't actually refer to these transmissions as Enochian themselves, but they believed they were the language of the angels, and they also believed they were the original speech of Enoch. Now, Dee and Kelly themselves implied that the calls functions as keys to unlock the realm of existence. The Golden Dawn then codified this idea into a structured magical hierarchy. Our friend Aleister Crowley and other later esotericists reinforced the notion that calls were a method of unlocking different levels of reality. And Vincent Bridges, who wrote this article, who we're going to get more into in a moment, took it further, suggesting a connection between Enochian workings, planetary evolution, galactic alignment, and DNA encoding. Well, we might not get there this video, but we will get there. Now, Dee and Kelly believed that these calls were designed, as I said, to unlock and activate the structural components of the universe. The first two calls established a central mechanism for the great temple of elemental forces. The next four calls in the Enochian system serve to activate and unlock the four elemental angles of the Great Table. These elemental angles correspond to the fundamental forces that shape material existence: fire, water, air, and earth. And each of these elements is located in one of the four quadrants of the Great Table. And unlocking them means activating the angelic intelligences, the non-human intelligences that govern these forces. The last call, the call of the ethers, opened access to 30 spiritual realms beyond the material. And in fact, I think I even have a recording of my friend Lon Milo Duquette doing this call. I'll see if I can find it. If so, I'll paste it below. But anyway, this is where we go back to the article that my friend sent me, and it relates to our whole plasma discussion and our talking to non-human intelligences. Okay, so here goes. In 1996, Bridges and a team went to Sedona with the goal of reconstructing the entire Enochian system, including the table, the seals, and the elemental tablets, and to activate all 49 calls in sequence. So they went to Bell Rock in Sedona and they vibrated or called out the angelic names, moving methodically through the system. Now, as they reached the end, the call of the ethers, something began to shift. The energy changed. The air became thick and charged. The Enochian vibrations created powerful resonances. Then, as he reached the final call, the call of silence, the environment erupted into a great, rushing, non-physical wind. He looked up, and encircling Bell Rock were tornadoes of light, spinning and shimmering, filled with countless eyes. The Orphanum. The angelic wheels described in Ezekiel's vision. They hovered around the perimeter of the site, watching. The tornadoes eventually departed, but one of Bridges' companions, who had been staring at them throughout the ritual, developed a sunburn, despite the fact that it had been a windless night with no direct sunlight. This experience left the entire group physically exhausted, yet electrically energized. And in the days that followed, Bridges found himself attempting to explain that angels were not ethereal winged figures, but massive plasma intelligences the size of nebula, existing within a higher order physics of consciousness. Really interesting, huh? Years later, this event would form part of a deeper realization that the Enochian system was not meant for Dee's time, but for ours, that it was designed to come online now, at the precise moment in history where the planet needs it most. This realization that the Enochian system was not meant for Dee's time, but for ours, gains even greater depth when we consider what modern science is now uncovering about the universe itself. Robert Temple's The New Science of Heaven, along with emerging discoveries in plasma physics, are revealing something truly paradigm-shifting. The material world, the solid, tangible universe that we obsess over, is the smallest fraction of reality. Less than 1% of the atomic matter in the cosmos is what we consider ordinary matter. The rest, it exists in plasma form, an ocean of charged, flowing intelligence that permeates space itself. Temple's work suggests that plasma may be more than just ionized gas. It may be alive. The vast, luminous clouds we see in deep space, the filaments that stretch beyond galaxies, the shimmering auroras of Earth's atmosphere, these are not just inert cosmic phenomena. They move, they respond, and they interact in ways that suggest agency. And here is where the boundary between science and esoteric wisdom blurs. What if these plasma beings are the same intelligences that the mystics, magicians, prophets, and Gnostics have been encountering for millennia. What if Theophanim, the spinning wheels of Ezekiel's vision, or the radiant entities Dee and Kelly communed with, or the massive tornadoes of light that appeared in Sedona are not symbolic, but real? What if they're not metaphors, but actual living plasma structures, vast living things beyond human comprehension? The more we learn about plasma, the more they behave like a medium for intelligence itself. Plasma self-organizes into complex structures, much like biological systems. It processes information in ways we don't yet understand. Temples suggest that they might have their own kind of consciousness. And plasma responds to electromagnetic fields, much like neural networks. If plasma is the dominant form of matter in the universe and it has properties akin to intelligence, then what does that make the universe itself? A living, thinking superorganism? A field of vast sentient consciousness? A temple of mind built not of stone but of radiant plasma filaments? That's what they talk about in the Bible. For centuries, humans have acted as if the physical world is all there is. But what if the true architecture of reality is hidden in the unseen, luminous medium? The idea that intelligence can exist without a solid body challenges everything we assume about life. It suggests that awareness itself may be a fundamental property of the cosmos, not something confined to biological brains. And if intelligence can exist as plasma, then maybe the angels never left. Maybe they were never in some distant realm. Maybe they are right here, moving in the vast structure of dust clouds and auroras, pulsing in the filaments of deep space, watching, waiting, speaking in the silent language of energy. What if Dee and Kelly's angelic conversations were not religious mysticism, but an early unrecognized attempt at contact with a plasma-based intelligence? What if the language of the angels was a frequency map, a way to attune human consciousness to the vibratory structure of plasma intelligence? What if the Enochian calls were never just incantations, but a modulation system, a tool for resonating the hidden architecture of sentient plasma? This is not just philosophy, it's cutting-edge physics hidden in ancient myth, right? The bleeding edge of consciousness research and the forgotten edge of ancient wisdom. All coming together at the precise moment we need it, right? So what happens when we start speaking the right language? What happens when we tune ourselves into the real structure of the universe? What happens when we listen? Maybe, just maybe, we will hear them speak. If this is as exciting to you as it is to me, hit those buttons, okay? Because we are on a journey of discovery here that, I don't know, it's blowing my mind. So come along for the ride, lovelies, okay? More soon.
One template to rule them all. One of the many puzzling questions this research has brought up has to do with certain spatial relationships that parallel the geometry of the human form. Often, these spatial analogues will be in the architecture itself and impossible to actually see. We have seen these organic proportions, these vital spatial relationships, both in single structures and in the layout of entire temple complexes. It begs the question, is there a functional reason why these measurements and proportions are so essential to the layout and operation of the temple? And why would they be seen again and again across cultures and across time? There is something about the ancient technology of the temple that requires the same harmonic relationships as the human body. Are we looking at an ancient, lost or forgotten branch, or modality of science, based on principles and knowledge that have been lost to time? or simply rejected by the modern West. Could this be related to modern scientific advancements in electromagnetics, resonance and field theory, and their mysterious interaction with human consciousness? In the case of more modern architecture, it might be easier to dismiss as a modern architect paying an homage to a design from the ancient world. But like an anecdote involving the cargo cult, its outer form is copied, but its hidden function and intellectual underpinning are absent. But in cases like the Hebrew movable tabernacles, there really were no architectural details except for these key proportions and relationships, and the same direct correspondence to the spatial relationships and intervals of the vital centers of the human body. In Egypt, Sumeria, Babylonian, Akkadian, and Vedic cultures, in ancient Buddhist and South American cultures, these same secret templates invisibly govern the layout of the physical temples. A common, hidden message expressed across each of the major cultures of the ancient world, and recurring as echoes in later sacred art and architecture. This is another example of an anomalously sophisticated scientific and technical acumen that appears to be fully developed at the very beginning of recorded history. What are these mysterious invisible templates drawing our attention to? Could we be looking at the tattered evidence of an ancient science, whose purposes and foundational understandings are opaque to us in the modern world? And is there something deeper that these temples all carry? How can it be that one template is the invisible and silent governor of temples and sacred art from around the world and throughout time? This is no conspiracy theory. It's not about aliens or unprovable speculation. It's about artists discovering a visual language embedded in the art and architecture of the ancient world. A visual language that transmits an ancient message. A scientific time capsule for the ages, immortalizing an anomalously sophisticated corpus of knowledge about the very thing, the hard problem of consciousness. Could this be a new Peary-Rice map? Could we be looking at ancient schematics which diagram and explain the aspects of the brain involved in our experience of consciousness? Could this finally be irrefutable evidence that the ancients understood and mapped the inner landscape, the inner universe of consciousness, as meticulously as they did the outer world? And what would the revelation of such a science mean to us in the modern day? In Magical Egypt Season 4, we demonstrate how these hidden artistic visual languages, which have been hiding in plain sight for all of recorded human history, are not found just in the ruins of ancient Egypt, but in the earliest Taoist and Hindu traditions as well, unifying art and science to create something that looks for all the world like the long-lost owner's manual for the human conscious experience. What does it all mean? To watch the entire documentary cataloguing these remarkable new discoveries, visit us at www.magicalegypt.com.